Professor, will you marry me? Chapter 1. The Betrayal. My boyfriend cheated on me. I refused to believe it at first. Ethan was so reserved, the kind of guy who'd blush if you held his gaze too long. How could someone like that cheat so easily? But when he showed up holding her hand right in front of me, my world crumbled. The other woman was Riley, his childhood best friend, the loud, tomboyish girl who'd always called me sis with a bright grin. Ethan apologized, stumbling over his words. I couldn't tell if I should be happy for their whole childhood sweethearts finally together storyline or devastated about my own love that ended before it really began. Riley gave me this teary apology, going on about how it just happened and don't blame Ethan, it's all my fault. It made me sick. We'd fought more than once because of Riley. She'd even tried to reassure me, we're just like siblings. If anything was going to happen, it would have happened years ago. Oh, right. To prove how close they were, she'd always say bros before, well, you know the rest. Girlfriends were replaceable, just another thing to toss aside when convenient. Some slights you don't let slide. To get back at the girl who stole my boyfriend, I decided to seduce her uncle. Riley's uncle was a law professor at our university, a visiting lecturer technically brought in for a special criminal law seminar series. Don't get me wrong, I despised Riley for being a homewrecker, but hey, soon I might be her aunt. I was an architecture major, so law was about as far from my world as possible. But for revenge, I dragged my sleep-deprived self to audit his class. My roommate, Sophie, was pre-law and had once been obsessed with Riley's uncle until one class cured her of that crush. I was stuck on campus finishing my thesis. Sophie was stuck retaking his class because he'd failed her. When I begged her to take me to his lecture, she looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mia, are you insane? Did my rants not get through to you? I sighed. Listen, Riley's uncle is your professor. She scoffed. Then I'd suggest giving up now. Trying to make Riley call you aunt is more delusional than trying to make Ethan regret losing you. Between being Ethan's what could have been or the homewrecker's aunt, I chose the latter. What does that tell you? I asked. Sophie glanced at me. That you weren't his type. True, maybe, but it felt like pouring salt on an open wound. No, it means they'd been hiding feelings for each other this whole time. Finally, after my relentless begging, she caved. Fine, but if you actually manage to bag the ice-cold Professor Carter, beg him to stop calling on me in class. Ice-cold Professor Carter, now that was a new description. I dragged Sophie to what I deemed the perfect spot in the lecture hall. She stared at the seat dead center in front of the podium and backed away. Great spot. You take it. I don't want to cramp your style. But I'm scared to sit alone. Sophie supported me, but firmly refused. The path of a warrior is lonely. Charge forward. I knew she was just traumatized, so I didn't push. I propped my chin on my hand, waiting. A guy who'd shown up late had to sit next to me, his face a picture of despair. He frowned at the empty seat I'd saved for Sophie. Overslept, missed all the good seats in the back. Really? This seems fine to me. Then Professor Elias Carter walked in, and the room went dead silent. The guy next to me muttered, "You've got guts, kid," before burying his nose in his textbook. I stared at Elias. He must have felt my gaze because he looked right at me. While everyone else probably prayed he'd look away, only one thought crossed my mind. This is going to be harder than I thought. Elias stood at the podium for 2 hours. I propped my head on my hand and watched him for 2 hours. The class trembled every time he called on someone, but I kept staring, determined to make him notice me. And it worked. He didn't call on me, probably because I wasn't even enrolled in his class. Instead, he methodically called on everyone else, then gave me this meaningful look. The guy next to me whispered, "Wait, you're just auditing his class?" I love learning. Brave soul. Yeah, brave enough to talk during class. One icy look from Elias, and my neighbor shrank into his seat. "Mr. Harris," Elias said, his voice smooth as honey but sounding like a death sentence. The most nervous person in the room was definitely the guy next to me, who'd practically curled into a ball. The silence thickened. The young man in the third row, second seat head down. Mr. Harris stood up, looking resigned. Elias looked at me, but spoke to him. "Analyze this case." I stared at the projector screen, pretending to pay attention even though my head was spinning with my own plans. A 19-year-old college student repeatedly used his roommate's cell phone without permission. When the roommate noticed unusual charges and planned to check the bill, The student became afraid of being caught. He brought a rope and 2 knives, lured his roommate to the roof of their dorm, and attacked him multiple times, stopping only when he believed the victim was dead. The roommate was later found by classmates and rushed to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with severe injuries resulting in permanent disability. Mr. Harris stammered through his analysis. The student has full criminal responsibility. He meets the elements of attempted murder, and there's no justifiable defense or other mitigating circumstances. So he's guilty. Elias wasn't finished. Anything else? Mr. Harris fumbled for words. The Criminal Procedure Code stipulates that victims can claim civil compensation for losses caused by crimes through an attached civil lawsuit. Is that correct? Probably. Elias smiled warm as spring sunshine, but his words were like thunder. Excellent. Mr. Harris, please copy the entire criminal code for me and submit it next Friday. Devil in disguise. Copying the entire criminal code? That thing was practically a dictionary. When I looked at Mr. Harris again, he was ashen-faced, but didn't dare complain. After class, he collapsed onto his desk. I felt guilty if it weren't for me distracting him. Professor Carter wouldn't have targeted him. I patted his shoulder. Hey, want me to copy half for you? He waved me off weakly. You still think he's attractive? I was honest. Still pretty good looking. Then good luck. You're going to need it. I think I was way too impulsive, I told Sophie later. I'm terrified that if I actually hit on him, he'll make me copy the criminal code too. She snickered. Oh, so the great revenge plan died before it even started? I tried to save face. It's just, you shouldn't dwell on the past. It's such a small grudge, really. Sophie stared straight ahead, her expression changing. Mia, isn't that your ex? I followed her gaze. Sure enough, there they were, Ethan and Riley, walking side by side like they were just good friends. Sophie egged me on. Mia, she stole your man. That's unforgivable. But all I could think about was Professor Carter making Mr. Harris copy the entire criminal code. I forced a laugh. Small grudge, remember? Ethan and Riley walked straight toward us. Riley positioned herself between us, using her body as a shield, glaring at me like I was a threat. Mia, can you take that? Sophie hissed. Go after Professor Carter. Become her aunt. Her words reignited my fire. You're right. What floor is Professor Carter's office on? 4th floor, 3rd door on the right. Go get him. I marched toward the 4th floor with my head held high, righteous fury propelling me forward. But when I stood in front of Elias's office door, my courage wavered. The angry rush faded under the strange, sympathetic looks from passing students. I paced back and forth, feeling like a beggar waiting for spare change. In a way, I was waiting for Elias's attention, but I refused to feel guilty about it. His niece had interfered with my relationship. Dragging him into this seemed only fair. I took a deep breath and reached for the doorknob. The door opened from the inside. A student I'd never seen before emerged, definitely pre-law, judging by his haunted expression. 3 parts frustration, 2 parts exhausted relief, 4 parts resignation. All directed at me. I stood there speechless. Stop looking at me like that. You're making me more nervous. I took another steadying breath and pushed open the door. Inside, Elias sat at his desk, wearing wire-rimmed glasses that somehow made his already striking hazel eyes even more compelling. His white dress shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. He looked distinguished, devastatingly handsome. He didn't look up from the papers he was grading. What do you need? My mind went blank. Oh, it's you, he said, finally looking up. Yes, your lecture today was amazing. Elias studied me. So you stared at me the entire class instead of looking at the board or taking notes? I walked over to his desk, leaning against it to meet his gaze more directly. Professor, can you really blame me? When there's beauty right in front of you, how can anyone look away? Elias nodded slowly. So you'd like me to tutor you in criminal law? Was he serious? No, I said firmly. I'm here to get your contact information so I can keep attending your lectures. Elias simply pointed to the class schedule taped to his desk. Copy it down yourself. Go on, copy it. I'd come here to flirt, not to be treated like a student. Elias, I said, dropping the Professor Carter formality. He responded with a simple, I want to date you to become Riley's aunt. I don't date. Elias rejected me flatly. But before I could process the disappointment, he added, and I don't think your main goal is actually dating me. Believe me, I really do want to date you. Elias stood up. He was much taller than me, easily over 6 feet, and when he moved closer, the proximity was overwhelming. Do you want to date me? Or do you want to become Riley's aunt? Aren't those the same thing? What did Riley do to you? Silence. Do all teachers have this sixth sense? Sophie looked at me with profound disappointment. So you told him the whole truth? I nodded numbly. Well, I tried to butter him up by asking if he'd help me revise my thesis. Did it work? I rubbed my face. It was worse than working on it alone. Mia, you're hopeless. Tell me what to do then. He said he doesn't date completely shut down my entire plan. Sophie turned away. Maybe he just needs convincing. You want me to knock on his office door again? You could try. Sophie's brain had been fried by too much criminal code studying. Wait, Sophie said thoughtfully. Remember what you said about persistence? Riley's a homewrecker, sure, but don't you think that's a lesson worth learning? She had a point. Sundays were always the worst. I was the only one left in the dorm. Everyone else had boyfriends to spend time with. My thought process was probably messed up. Dating Ethan had been like playing house, no physical affection, not even hand-holding. And then he'd apparently had no problem sleeping with Riley? When you're alone, your mind wanders to dark places. Sorry, Ethan and Riley, you drew the short straw. Tonight, I'd settle old scores. If Riley could boldly pursue Ethan, I could definitely win over her uncle. I marched to the faculty parking lot, having asked around for Professor Carter's designated spot. Sophie, probably distracted by her boyfriend, called me half an hour later. Mia, Professor Carter didn't come to campus today. So I've been freezing my butt off, and you're just telling me this now? Well, to make it up to you, I found his home address. You want it? How generous of you. I hung up. I'd come this far, could I really turn back now? If I went back to the dorm, the entrance would be full of couples making out. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Our university had semi-strict security, which meant there were loopholes to exploit. Timing, when the security guard took his nap. Method, climb over the wall. Sophie had taught me this technique, warning, be careful not to get stuck halfway. I'd scoffed at the time, but when I perched on top and looked down at the drop on the outside, my confidence evaporated. The distance seemed much higher than I'd remembered. I sat on the wall, panicking. I closed my eyes and started to climb down. I fumbled for footholds, stretching as far as I could. Then I took the plunge and jumped the final distance. Sure enough, I misjudged and stumbled backward only to be caught by a pair of strong arms. Thanks. Embarrassing, but manners mattered. Can you stand on your own? His voice was deep, cultured. Yeah, sure. Wait, actually, I don't think I can. My legs were shaky from being stuck on the wall. He helped me stand upright. I turned to apologize properly and froze. Professor Carter? You're heavier than you look. Silence. To break the awkwardness, I greeted him as cheerfully as possible. Professor, heading home? Elias looked different outside campus, more relaxed. He wore a camel coat with his hands in his pockets, looking effortlessly elegant. Yes. Why? Do you want to come? I immediately linked my arm through his. Let's go. Elias froze, clearly not expecting me to actually take him up on the polite offer. A female college student going to a stranger's house at night, are you sure that's wise? Positive. I came prepared for everything. I patted my jacket pocket meaningfully. Elias stared at me, taking a deep breath. Miss, I cut him off. Call me Mia. You don't even know your future wife's name yet? Mia M.I.A. Elias looked helpless. I already told you. I don't date. You're not like Riley, are you? What? Do you have some childhood sweetheart you've been secretly pining for? Silence. What exactly did Riley do to you? Wait, Professor. Let's talk somewhere else. I'm scared the security guard will catch me. I tugged on his arm. Getting caught climbing the wall meant official demerits on my record. Fine. Where do you suggest? Your place. I didn't hesitate. Elias took a deep breath, studying my face. Are you absolutely sure? I pulled out my phone and showed him the rideshare I'd already called. Let's go, Professor. I'm freezing out here. Aren't you afraid of what might happen? I tugged him toward the waiting car. I'm more afraid of what won't happen. Hurry, it's cold. Elias said nothing during the entire ride. I propped my chin on my hand, openly staring at him. His profile was perfect, sharp jawline, clean lines. Up close, I noticed his eyelashes were surprisingly long. casting delicate shadows on his cheekbones. He raised an eyebrow without turning. "Why are you staring?" "I still think you look better with glasses." "Why?" More distinguished. Elias actually laughed. "How do you know I'm a devil?" "Just a feeling. I guess we'll find out soon enough." Silence. Elias unlocked his apartment door with his fingerprint. I eyed the biometric lock. If everything went according to plan, I'd be adding my own fingerprint tomorrow. He handed me a new pair of gray slippers, identical to his own. "I prefer pink," I said. Elias leaned against the wall. "So what exactly did Riley do to you?" Elias leaned against the wall. Elias leaned against the wall. I brushed past him, making myself comfortable on his couch. I patted the spot next to me. "Sit." Elias sat down and pulled out a cigarette, lighting it and taking a long drag before exhaling slowly. "Well, first tell me why you don't date." Elias raised an eyebrow. "I only marry." I patted my chest in relief. "Oh, then I'm fine with that." So, Mia, can you answer my question now?" "No." Elias stubbed out his cigarette. "Give me one good reason." "I told you stop calling your future wife Miss. I'm not your student, and you can't make me copy the criminal code." Elias actually chuckled. "You're quite confident." I leaned in close, whispering directly in his ear. "Because after tonight, I will be your wife." "So, Mia, answer my question." I said it slowly, deliberately. "Because your precious niece stole my boyfriend. She had an affair with him while we were together." Elias nodded. "So you're here to get revenge by seducing her uncle?" I shook my head firmly. "Can't you be more confident in yourself?" "I'm here because I genuinely like you." "I told you, I don't date." I dumped the contents of my bag onto his coffee table. "Exactly. So I brought my driver's license and household registration documents. We can go get our marriage license tomorrow morning." Elias picked up my household registration booklet, examining it. "Your revenge is going to cost you quite a lot." I pulled a red envelope from my bag. I even made her a red envelope. "This Christmas, I'm giving her an aunt's blessing." Elias opened the envelope and pulled out the $2.50 inside. "Very generous, aunt, aren't you?" "So, should we skip dating entirely and go straight to marriage?" Elias looked at me with an intensity that matched my own eagerness. "Go take a shower first." Chapter 2. Second Thoughts. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. I sat on Elias's couch, suddenly acutely aware of what I was doing. This was insane. I'd known this man for exactly one day, one lecture, one office visit, and now I was in his apartment, supposedly ready to marry him tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed. "Sophie, did you actually go to his house? Are you insane?" I stared at the message. Was I insane? Maybe. The bathroom door opened. Elias emerged, hair damp, wearing a simple white t-shirt and dark sweatpants. He looked younger like this. Less intimidating. Almost vulnerable. "Your turn," he said. I didn't move. Elias sat down next to me. "Second thoughts?" I swallowed. "This is crazy, right? We don't even know each other." "We don't," he agreed. "So why are you going along with this?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember when you tripped over that uneven sidewalk? Freshman year?" I froze. "How do you know about that?" "You were laughing so hard you literally fell flat on your face." He pulled out his phone, showing me a slightly blurry photo me sprawled on the ground. Sophie doubled over with laughter beside me. "When did you take this?" 3 years ago. You were telling your friend how cute some guy was." Elias's voice was soft. "You were staring at me when you fell." My heart stopped. You've been watching me for 3 years?" "Not watching, just noticing." He set his phone down. "I don't date because I've never met anyone I wanted to date. Until you showed up in my class yesterday, looking at me like I was some kind of challenge to overcome. I didn't know what to say." "Mia, I'm not going along with this because I'm desperate or lonely or trying to help you get revenge." Elias turned to face me fully. "I'm going along with this because I've wanted to ask you out for 3 years, and you just handed me an excuse." That's insane," says the woman who climbed over a wall to show up at my apartment with marriage documents. He had a point. I laughed a slightly hysterical sound. "So we're both crazy." "Apparently." "And you really want to marry me? Tomorrow? Without dating first?" Elias reached for my hand. "I only marry. I told you that." "This is the most reckless thing I've ever done." "Me too." I looked at our intertwined fingers. His hands were larger than mine, with thin calluses on his index finger from years of writing. What if it doesn't work? I asked quietly. What if we wake up tomorrow and realize we made a huge mistake? Then we'll deal with it. Elias squeezed my hand. But I don't think we will. How can you be so sure? I can't, he smiled. But I've spent 3 years trying to convince myself I didn't want you. It didn't work. So maybe it's time to try the opposite. I studied his face, the sharp jawline, the hazel eyes that seemed to see right through me, the slight smile that made my stomach flip. Okay, I said. Let's get married tomorrow. Okay, but first I stood up. I really do need to shower, and you need to tell me everything about those 3 years. Elias pulled me back down, kissing me softly. When he pulled away, we were both breathless. Deal, he whispered. The water was scalding, but I needed it to clear my head. This was happening. I was actually doing this. Marrying a man I barely knew because his niece stole my boyfriend. Except, it wasn't just revenge anymore, was it? I thought about Elias keeping my photo for 3 years, watching me from a distance, never approaching because why? Because I was a student? Because he didn't want to complicate things? And now I'd barged into his life with my ridiculous plan, and instead of rejecting me outright, he'd agreed. I wrapped myself in a towel, staring at my reflection. My hair was a mess. My eyes were slightly wild. I looked exactly like someone about to make a life-altering decision based on impulse and spite. But when I opened the bathroom door, Elias was waiting, and the way he looked at me made everything else fade away. Come here, he said softly. I went. Later, wrapped in his sheets, I traced patterns on his chest. Tell me about the 3 years. Elias was quiet for a moment. What do you want to know? Everything. When you first noticed me, what you thought, why you never said anything. He caught my hand, pressing it flat against his heart. I noticed you because you were laughing, really laughing, the kind that makes you forget to be self-conscious. And then you fell, and instead of being embarrassed, you just kept laughing. I smiled. Sophie still makes fun of me for that. I took the photo because I wanted to remember that laugh, that joy. His voice was low. And then I saw you around campus always with that boyfriend of yours, but never looking quite as happy as you did that day. Never laughing like that. Ethan wasn't big on laughter. I noticed. Elias shifted, pulling me closer. I told myself it was inappropriate. You were a student, not mine, but still. And you were in a relationship. So I kept my distance. For 3 years? For 3 years. Until you showed up in my class yesterday, staring at me like I was the solution to all your problems. I laughed. I thought you were the solution to my revenge. Were you disappointed when you realized I wasn't going to play along easily? Terrified, I admitted. You made that poor student copy the entire criminal code just because I distracted him. Elias smiled. I made him copy it because he wasn't paying attention. You were just convenient leverage. Liar. Maybe a little. He kissed my forehead. But when you showed up at my office, I knew I was in trouble. Because you were looking at me the way you did 3 years ago, like nothing else mattered. And when I showed up here, I knew I was lost. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him properly. So we're really doing this? Marriage? Tomorrow? Unless you've changed your mind. I haven't. I paused. But I'm still terrified. Good, me too. Really? Elias pulled me back down, wrapping his arms around me. Really, but I'd rather be terrified with you than spend another 3 years watching from a distance. I buried my face in his chest. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Your standards are low. Shut up. He laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. It made my heart skip. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, terrified and hopeful and completely insane. And in the morning, we'd make it official. Chapter 3. Mrs. Carter. The marriage registration office was surprisingly mundane for a place where life-altering decisions were made official. I held my documents with slightly trembling hands. Elias stood beside me, calm and steady, like he registered marriages every Tuesday morning. Last chance to back out, I whispered. He squeezed my hand. Not a chance. The official looked bored as she processed our paperwork. Any objections to this marriage? I glanced at Elias. He raised an eyebrow. No objections, we said in unison. Sign here and here. Initial here. It was shockingly quick. A few signatures, a stamp, and suddenly we were married. I stared at the red marriage certificate in my hands, still in complete shock. Elias held out his hand, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Let's go home, Mrs. Carter." Mrs. Carter. I was Mrs. Carter now. So this Christmas, I can actually give Riley that $2.50 red envelope as her aunt? Elias pulled me into his arms. Is giving Riley that red envelope more exciting than being with me? I kissed his cheek impulsively. Be confident I fell for your looks first. Then why don't you fall for me all over again, Mrs. Carter? I pushed him away playfully, but he seemed to remember something important, catching my wrist. When are you going to tell your mother? Right. I'd eloped with a university professor. I hadn't told my mother a single thing. I'll call her, I said, already feeling guilty. I dialed her number, already imagining her reaction. Hi, Mom. What do you want? If it's money, ask your father. Ouch, fair enough. Mom, I'm dating someone. How long have you been together? How old is he? It's a guy. He's 27. Oh, that's reasonable. What's his name? Elias Carter. He works at the university. Elias watched me with obvious amusement, playing with my earlobe in a way that sent shivers down my spine. A graduate student? That's nice, honey. No, not exactly. A professor? Yeah. Mia Thompson. You little, Mom, there's more. We got our marriage license this morning. Mia, you have some nerve. I hung up quickly. But this was obviously too big to ignore. She called back 10 more times in rapid succession. I played dead, not answering a single call. Elias glanced at my buzzing phone. Answer it. I snuggled up to him. Professor, I'm scared. Answer it. I'll talk to her. I answered and respectfully handed him the phone. Mia, what were you thinking? Hello, Mrs. Thompson. This is Elias Carter. Elias took the phone out to the balcony. When he came back 10 minutes later, he simply tossed my phone back to me. All taken care of. I stared at the texts. Mom. Mia. Elias seems like such a wonderful young man. You need to treat him well. Mom. Make him a nice dinner tonight. Mom. Send me a picture of Elias. I stared in disbelief. A mother-in-law always favors her son-in-law. Moving out of the dorms was bittersweet. Sophie helped me pack, looking skeptical. You actually did it? You bagged Professor Elias Carter? I smiled. Your Professor Carter had a crush on me first. She rubbed her arms. Stop. Just spit it out. Remember when I tripped over that sidewalk? He was there watching. So he saw your red thermal underwear too? I winced. Can we please stop bringing that up? Sophie's eyes widened. Oh my God, so he was getting revenge on me? That's why he called on me so much in class? Mia, this is literally all your fault. Elias appeared in the doorway. Sophie covered her mouth in horror. He leaned casually against the frame. For Mia's sake, I've decided not to make you copy the entire criminal code anymore. I patted Sophie's shoulder. That's the best I can do for you. Farewell. Sophie literally threw my suitcase out the door and slammed it in my face. Life as Mrs. Carter was unexpected. Elias was meticulous about everything, his office, his apartment, his schedule. He graded papers at exactly 7 p.m. every evening. He made coffee at 6 a.m. without fail. He folded his clothes with military precision. I, on the other hand, was chaos incarnate. The first week, I accidentally reorganized his entire bookshelf to make it prettier. He spent an hour putting it back in alphabetical order without saying a word, though I caught him smiling when he thought I wasn't looking. The second week, I fell asleep on his important case files. He woke me up by kissing my forehead and simply worked around me. The third week, I realized I was falling in love with him. Not the way I'd loved Ethan, that had been comfortable, safe, boring. This was terrifying. Elias challenged me, pushed me, made me want to be better. And the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered, it made my heart ache in the best way. What are you thinking about? Elias asked one evening, pulling me into his lap as he graded papers. Just this. Us. He kissed my temple. Having regrets? The opposite. I turned to face him. I'm thinking about how insane it is that the best decision I ever made was completely impulsive and driven by spite. Elias laughed. Romantic. I'm serious. If Riley hadn't stolen Ethan, I never would have shown up in your class. We might have spent another 3 years dancing around each other. Or we might have never happened at all. The thought made my chest tighten. I don't want to think about that. Then don't. He set his pen down, giving me his full attention. We're here now. That's what matters. Elias? I love you. He went very still. Say that again. I love you, I repeated, more confident this time. I know it's only been a few weeks, and maybe it's too soon, but... He kissed me, cutting off my rambling. When he pulled back, his eyes were impossibly soft. I love you too, Mia. I've loved you since you fell on that sidewalk 3 years ago, laughing like the world was full of joy. I felt tears prick my eyes. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes me want to cry, and I'm trying to be cool and composed. Elias wiped away a tear that had escaped. You've never been cool or composed. That's why I love you. I buried my face in his chest, overwhelmed. We're really doing this, aren't we? For real. Not just revenge or impulse or spite. We're really doing this. Good, I whispered, because I don't think I could walk away now even if I wanted to. Good, he echoed, because I'm not letting you go. Meeting Elias's family felt like the final test. His parents were warm and welcoming. His sister Riley's mother held my hand with genuine affection. Elias isn't always great with words. If he ever says anything rude, don't take it to heart. We're all on your side. I thought privately rude. He's one of the smoothest talkers I've ever met. But I just smiled. The whole family was welcoming except Riley. Her uncle, who'd been perpetually single for 27 years, had suddenly married her ex-boyfriend's former girlfriend. Her face went through several shades of green and white. I smiled sweetly. We're close to the same age, you don't have to call me aunt if it makes you uncomfortable. But Elias frowned, suddenly as serious as he was in the classroom. Mia is my legal wife. She's your elder now. Riley managed to choke out a aunt. Absolutely perfect. I graciously handed her the red envelope. Good girl, here's your aunt's gift. She opened her mouth probably to accuse me of only marrying Elias for revenge, but I stared her down silently. Under the warm gazes of all the relatives, Riley reluctantly accepted my $2.50. I wasn't finished. I brought up Ethan casually. I heard Ethan has a new girlfriend. It's really amazing how quickly you two got together after we broke up. I just planted a seed of doubt. Mission accomplished. After dinner, Elias insisted on taking me to the movies. We got married first, so now we're dating backward. What do you want to watch, Mrs. Carter? I'd never been to the movies alone with a boyfriend before. With Ethan, it had always been an awkward threesome. With Elias, he was genuinely willing to sit through a cheesy romantic comedy. The movie itself wasn't great. I kept dozing off. But whenever the main characters kissed on screen, Elias would kiss me too. He pulled away finally, both of us breathless. Mia, let's go home. I knew exactly what he meant. My face flushed. The movie isn't over yet. We can finish this at home. But I paid for the full movie. He kissed me again, effectively ending that argument. We didn't see how the movie ended. Epilogue. 3 years later, I found Elias in his office, grading papers with those wire-rimmed glasses that still made my heart skip. Professor Carter, I said. He looked up. Yes, Mrs. Carter? I have a complaint to file. Oh? What kind of complaint? You told me you only marry, not date, but you never mentioned the part about terrible morning breath or stealing all the blankets. Elias stood, walking around his desk to pull me into his arms. Any other complaints? You're also terrible at loading the dishwasher, and you reorganized my thesis notes without asking. He kissed me, shutting me up effectively. And yet you're still here, Mrs. Carter. I smiled against his lips. And yet I'm still here. 3 years had passed since that impulsive decision. 3 years of learning each other's rhythms and quirks. 3 years of arguments and makeups and lazy Sunday mornings. 3 years of falling deeper in love every single day. I'd graduated with my architecture degree. Elias had been promoted to full-time faculty. We'd moved into a bigger apartment. We'd adopted a cat named Justice Elias's Idea, who knocked over his carefully organized legal briefs regularly. Life wasn't perfect. We fought about the dishwasher and blanket distribution, and whose turn it was to clean the litter box. But it was ours. Mia, Elias said softly, pulling back to look at me. Do you ever regret it? Marrying me so quickly? I thought about it honestly. About the fear and uncertainty. About climbing that wall and falling into his arms. About bringing marriage documents to a stranger's apartment. Not for a second, I said. You? Not for a second. He kissed my forehead, then my nose, then my lips. I love you, Mrs. Carter. I love you too, Professor. Sophie texted me later. Still can't believe you actually married the ice-cold Professor Carter. How's married life? I looked at Elias currently arguing with our cat about jurisdiction over the sofa and smiled. Perfect, I texted back. Absolutely perfect. Because marrying Elias Carter impulsively, recklessly, without a single logical reason, remained the smartest thing I'd ever done. Even if he did steal all the blankets. Even if Riley still couldn't look me in the eye at family gatherings. Even if my $2.50 red envelope had become a running family joke. Some impulses are worth following, especially the ones that lead you home. And home, I'd learned, wasn't a place. It was the man who'd kept my photo for 3 years, waiting for the day I'd finally fall into his life. It was worth every crazy, impulsive, absolutely ridiculous decision that led me here. The end.